Hey, what's up everybody? Thanks for joining, thank you for deciding to watch this boring video. It's not boring, today I'll be doing something completely different. I know this is a gaming channel, it's supposed to be a gaming channel, but I kind of want to talk about something else every once in a while. Because it's pretty much a channel where I do whatever I want. I've been meaning to do this video for a long time. I kind of want to do it on my main channel a long time ago, talk about my favorite bands, about my favorite groups, and most specifically about my 10 favorite albums. I'm actually kind of nervous because, when it comes to bands, I have a bunch of favorite bands, and most of my favorite albums are from, the same bands, right? The title of this video is my top 10 favorite music albums, so it should be just pretty much 9 Inch Nails, The Cure, and Deftones. That's it. So to avoid this video being like that, just full of the same bands over and over, I decided to limit myself with only one album per band. So all of these 10 albums you're about to see today are from different bands, each from a different band, and some of them are among my all-time favorite bands, and some of them are a little bit controversial. It may be the only album that I like of that particular band. It's pretty interesting. But anyway, I do have a bunch of honorable mentions. I have pretty much a lot of the albums of my favorite bands, like 9 Inch Nails being one of them, The Cure, Deftones, are not gonna be here because I'm only gonna choose one album per band. So all of the other albums that I'm leaving out are pretty much my honorable mentions. And there's a lot of bands that won't be in this video, like Fear Factory. I can't decide which album I like the most. Fear Factory, man. And then there's this grunge band called L7. L7, that's right, a bunch of girls. Crazy ass girls, I love them. Not sure which album is the best. I own both of them, I own 2 albums, by that band. And there's Hocico. You guys know I'm a fan of Hocico. You've seen me probably with the t-shirt. Hocico is a Mexican band of dark electro music. Agrotech, that's the type of music it is. And then there's Trova de Morte. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of bands that I'm leaving out of this video. Dead Sea, oh my god, Dead Sea. Anybody knows Dead Sea? I do, and I love that band to death. But my biggest honorable mention is this one I'm gonna show right now. The Pleasure Principle by Gary Numan. Gary Numan is one of my top 5 favorite bands of all time. Well, the guy is not a band in studio, but live he is a band. He's been there since one of the most influential musicians of all time. He's been there since 1978. He pretty much laid the basis, among other bands from back in the day, for industrial music. He was making synth pop, synth rock music back then, something electronic, something industrial-ish. It's such a genius. And if I had to choose which one it's my favorite album of this guy, is The Pleasure Principle, 1979. However, I do not own this album. When I was in England, I saw it there, but for some stupid ass reason, I didn't buy the CD. I like to collect CDs, by the way. I'm more of a hardcore collector when it comes to video games and JRPGs, but when it comes to music albums, I collect them too, every now and then. Most of the albums you'll see today are pretty beat up, by the way, because these CDs have been with me for a long time. Most of them are like 20 years old, since I was like an angry teenager. But anyway, Gary Numan, The Pleasure Principle, honorable mention. Right. Alright guys, so thanks for joining and thanks for watching. So I'm gonna start with my number 10. My number 10 is this band. I'm an industrial guy. You'll see a lot of industrial shit in here. Well, no, not really. You're gonna see a lot of variety here. And with some albums you'll be like, what? Anyway, this is a band that, this is the first album of the band. The band is called Orgy. That's right. They're still around. Well, it's just the vocalist, Jay Gordon, plus some other new guys. All the other band members of the original band, went on their own way with their own projects. And this album in particular is the first album of the band. It's called Candyass. Don't ask me, that the band's name and the band's album, Candyass by Orgy. I know, man, I know, but this is a phenomenal record. I really like the second record too. It's called Vapor Transmission. I have it too. As you can see, this is kind of beat up. You see it's kind of beat up. the parental advisory, explicit lyrics in there. Yeah, a lot of albums, were released here in Mexico with this, parental advisory. And in the US they weren't, look it up, this did not get that, but it got it here in Mexico. Anyway, yeah, Orgy. This is an industrial rock, industrial metal band, a little bit on the modern side. They came out in 1998. This album is from 1998, and it's a phenomenal record. I like almost every single song in here. The records that I'll show today are albums that I like almost every single song. That's when you found one of your favorite records, even if it's not by one of your top 3 or 5 favorite bands, because there's a lot of The Cure records, 9 Inch Nails records, Deftones records that I don't like every single song, just a bunch of them. So all of the albums that you're about to see today, most of the songs in them I love, and this is from beginning to end, this is a masterpiece of a record. Orgy, Candyass, look it up if you can. Now, I guess to make this video more entertaining, I'm gonna tell you how I met these bands. Orgy is a band that I met, I think it was, Korn. Korn is, Korn. Who the fuck doesn't know Korn, right? And Korn had this show back in the late 90s called The Family Values. So my friend handed me, a pirated record of the 1988 Family Values record. It came with songs from Rammstein, and Korn and Ice Cube. I don't know what. I'm not really into rap music, but Orgy was one of them, and that's how I met them. I was like, man, what's that band? That's awesome. They sound really good. So immediately I bought this record, and I've been a fan of the band ever since. After 3 records, the band broke up, and then a couple of years ago they reunited. Well, only the vocalist, Jay Gordon, reunited with new members, and yeah, it's not great, man. The first 3 records of Orgy are phenomenal, but the last music they've done so far, nah, it's kind of bad. Anyway, you're listening to JRPG music right now because all of these bands are copyrighted, every single one of them. I can't use music by these bands. I would love to do that, but I want to make, I don't know, $3 fucking out of this video if I can. Anyway, if I use music from these bands, I won't get a single penny. This is a very obscure band. This is called the Deadlights. Check this out. Can you see the Deadlights? They only released this one album and then the band fell apart. This is like a new metal record. Well, not 100% new metal. It's heavier than your usual new metal, but it is new metal. This was back in the 2000. It is the year 2000, I think, when this album came out. Yeah, 2000. And this is back then when, damn, the explosion of new metal, it was just huge. There were a lot of these new metal bands and also these new post-grunge bands, they call them, back then. And it was just this huge explosion, this saturation of these bands out there. And according to big producers like Rick Beato, I don't know if you guys know Rick Beato, he has a YouTube channel, he was a big producer. New metal is pretty much this explosion is what pretty much damaged the industry a lot, alongside the internet. And when a lot of artists were saying that rock is dead, Marilyn Manson. I don't like Marilyn Manson. Used to like the guy back in the day when I was an angry teenager. Not anymore. So the Deadlights, a new metal band. This is the only record they released, and this is a phenomenal record, man. You listen to this record from start to finish, and you're like, it blew me away. And this is a band that I met when I was in my teens. I probably was like 14 or 15 years old. 15 years old, it came in 2000. And there was this record store back then. It still exists today. And it's called Mix Up here in Mexico. I don't know if this franchise is everywhere in other countries, but with Mix Up is a franchise of record selling business here in Mexico. And they used to have, I think they still do, they used to have these like cubicles, these panels where you could just listen to music. They would put up a bunch of CDs in there. They got the metal section, in the rock section, the pop section, the jazz section, each section, each genre, you know, for each cubicle, and they would just put random bands in there. And this is how I met some of the bands here. And Deadlights was one of them. You know, I was just like, what the hell is this? The Deadlights? And it was just there, and of course it got my attention that this. I was a fan of this, you know. Pretty much every metal or rock band with this, that was good news back then. I was like, that's a seal of quality right there. So I listened to them and I was blown away. I was like, man, this is wow. I grabbed the CD and I bought it. Man, I love these, the Deadlights. Too bad they only released this one album and the band faded away. Damn. Anyway. So the next one is pretty weird. I know you're probably gonna judge me for this, but this is like a synth pop band. This is the synth pop band. This is such an icon in the music. It has influenced a heck of a lot of bands from rock to pop to whatever. I don't know if you ever heard of this band. It's called I'm probably gonna mispronounce this. It's Cocteau Twins. Well, it's spelled Cocteau, Twins. Cocteau Twins. Cocteau Twins. I think it's pronounced Cocteau Twins. This is a band from the 80s and 90s, and then the late 90s, I think it broke apart because the lead singer, Elizabeth Fraser, she's one of my favorite singers of all time. She was married to the guitarist of this band, and then I think they got divorced. You know, and the band broke up. Kind of like what happened with Sonic Youth. Now, I'm not the biggest Sonic Youth fan, but I like some songs by Sonic Youth. And one of the most influential indie rock bands from the 80s, Sonic Youth, and the 90s. The guys were married and they got divorced, and then goodbye Sonic Youth. Well, Cocteau Twins was the same. This is a beautiful, extremely beautiful record. Elizabeth Fraser, the record is called Heaven on Las Vegas. The Deadlights is just the Deadlights, self-titled album. This record is the most popular record of this band, the most successful record for very good reasons, because it's a phenomenal record. Cocteau Twins, Heaven or Las Vegas, whatever you want to pronounce that. And it's just very dream pop, synth pop, you know, type of music back then. And it just blows you away. You know, when I first listened to this, I was like, wow. And this is one band, I really don't remember how I got into them. I think it was back when YouTube was barely a thing, back in 2006, I think. When YouTube was all about, you know, people uploading music and vlogs and rants. Anybody remember those times? Right? And I think that's how I met this band. I was just searching for new music back then, and this band just came out, you know, Cocteau Twins. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that Deftones had this record called B-Sides and Rarities. Deftones is a metal band from Sacramento, California. And these guys made a few covers in that record, including one for Cocteau Twins. And that's also probably how I met them. So I don't know what happened first. If I met them by myself on YouTube, or if I listened to that record now and I got curious. You know, this is a record of Cocteau Twins. What kind of name is that, right? I don't remember, but you know, ever since then I became a fan of the band. I'm not the biggest fan of the band. Cocteau Twins is not one of my favorite bands, nor is the Deadlights. Orgy is probably in my top 10, by the way. Cocteau Twins, it isn't. You know, there's a couple of records that I kind of like, but this is the only one that I love. The other records are kind of okay. I'm not the biggest Cocteau Twins fan, but I'm a huge Heaven or Las Vegas fan. Anyway, beautiful record, and this album pretty much influenced my very first book. The first book I ever wrote, man, I don't have it here. Prelude to Oblivion. It's in Spanish only. I haven't translated it to English. Someday, I promise, this year I'll translate one of my books in Spanish. But yeah, without this album, my first book wouldn't exist. So let's continue with it. Another band, another unusual band. You're not gonna believe I'm a huge fan of this band since I was like 19 years old. I became a diehard fan of this band. Lately, the past, I don't know, 3-4 records haven't been that great. They just released a new album like a couple of weeks ago. And this is a band of indie rock, alternative rock called Placebo. Yeah, cringe if you want to, I don't care, I love Placebo. Placebo is a band that I started listening to when I was like 19 years old because I don't remember how I met them. I think I watched a video, you know, when MTV was good. when MTV wasn't the shithole it became nowadays, you know, like 15 years ago, back when it was still, you know, releasing, you know, good music, MTV. And I think I watched a video called This Picture by the band Placebo, and that album is called Sleeping with Ghosts. I own most of Placebo's first records, most of them, not the latest ones. They've been, you know, by releasing several albums that I just couldn't get into. I liked a few songs. This new record, I already forgotten the name, you know. I don't remember what's the name of it, but I only like a couple of songs, you know. But Placebo back in the day, man. And I struggle between this album and another one called Without You I'm Nothing, which is the second album. This is the very first Placebo album, self-titled album. I don't know why it made them to put this kid in there in the cover. But anyway, this and Without You I'm Nothing, which are the first two albums, are my favorites by this band by far. And to be honest, I just can't decide which one I like the most, so I'm picking this one because it has my favorite song by this band called Bionic. And yeah, I know this might not be everyone's cup of tea, because I know a lot of you are metalheads, you know, you like metal, you like this dark music and this heavy music. Placebo is not like that, you know, it's kind of like, you know, yeah, depressive emo music, you know. But I was a little bit of an emo when I was 19 years old. When I was 20, I gave up. Anyway, Placebo was a part of my life, and, you know, it will always be a part of my life. Placebo, the first record. Now, let's continue. I guess that Placebo was my number 6. 10? No, that was my 7. So my number 6. My number 6 is a band that I've known for a lot of time. I think I met them with a song called Millennium from their album Pandemonium, 1994. It's called Killing Joke. And let me tell you something, because you're probably thinking, oh, like the Batman comic. Let me tell you something interesting about that. Well, if you've read or watched the movie, I think it's a movie or a cartoon, whatever, if you read the comic, you know, Killing Joke, it's pretty famous with the Joker and Batman. The Joker, his physical appearance, you know, in that comic book was based on the lead singer of this band, Killing Joke, and that's the name of him. The guy who wrote the comic was a huge fan of Killing Joke. And you probably don't know this band, but it's one of the most important and most heavily influential bands when it comes to post-punk music and industrial music. These are pioneers. They came out in 1979, you know, back when the huge, you know, post-punk bands, you know, were being there, like The Cure, like Joy Division, then New Order, you know, those bands, Gary Newman too, you know. In Killing Joke these guys are from England, and at the beginning, they weren't that successful. They released their first self-titled album, which was pretty great. Some success in there, but then they released, like, I think 3 or 4 more albums, and they weren't that successful until this masterpiece. This is called Nighttime, released in 1985. But I didn't know this album back then. I only knew a couple of songs from the 90s. Millennium was my favorite that I discovered on YouTube. Actually, this was like probably 10 to 12 years ago, probably more. Yeah, probably 12, 13 years ago. And I never really gave him a chance until I was living in England. Actually, not because these guys aren't from England, that's just a coincidence. I was just there and I wanted to find some new music. And I was like, man, remember that band, Killing Joke? Let's give him another chance, you know. And wow, I'm glad I did. And this quickly became my favorite album. And Killing Joke is nowadays one of my top 5 favorite bands of all time. These hugely influential guys, you know, are still going. They're still releasing albums. The last one was in 2015. It's called Plion, something like that. Masterpiece of an album. And they haven't released anything yet. They were supposed to release something a couple of years ago, but you know, COVID-19 happened. But anyway, Killing Joke, remember that name. One of the most influential rock bands of all time. Anyway, so let's get down to my top 5. Next one is a very extremely unusual album. I'm not a fan of this band. In fact, I don't hate these guys, but after they released a certain album, which I'll mention in a bit, I was kind of like, you know what? Nah, they're starting to go into a different direction, and they never came back. And they're still going, and it is an extremely popular band, perhaps the most punk popular band of all time, the most popular band in punk music, and that is Green Day. That's right, but I'm not a fan of Green Day. When people ask me if I like the band, I usually say no. But I never forget to mention that I'm a die-hard fan of this album, Insomniac. And this is the oldest record that I own in my collection, I think, because this used to belong to my brother. This is this is Green Day's fourth album. They released one album in 1991 or two. What was it called? I don't remember, and it was okay. And then they released an album called Kerplunk. It was okay. It was just generic punk music, in my opinion. Then they released the famous Dookie, which I own also. I own Dookie. Dookie is probably their most influential record of all time and one of the most influential punk rock records of all time. Dookie is great. It's an excellent album. I like it too. But Insomnia came out in 1996 and it blew my mind. And I was 10 years old. When I was 10 years old, man, I was starting to get into Aerosmith, into Guns N' Roses. I even like Scatman Brothers. Anybody remember Scatman? That guy. Rest in peace, by the way. I liked a lot of shit back then, but I was starting to enter my rebellious phase when I was 10 years old. And my brother had he had the cassette. Alright, the cassette. And so he also had the album for some reason. So he gave me, I think I got the cassette. And then for some reason I traded the cassette to him for this one. I don't even remember the story, but it was a long time ago, and I became a huge fan of this album. And all this freaking album is an album that I can play on my guitar. The entire freaking album. Because punk music is usually very easy to play. I mean, it's hard to play this kind of music because, well, the punk music is easy to play because the notes are very easy. But playing it can get really tiresome, on the guitar. But anyway, Green Day, and then after this album, they released in 1998 an album called Nimrod, which included the song Time of Your Life. And when I heard that song, I was like, what the fuck is going on? This doesn't sound like Green Day at all. And that album, I never owned it because I always had mixed feelings about it. And then came Warning, and then came the album you probably know the best, which is American Idiot. And when that album came out, I was like, this band, fuck Green Day. Fuck this band. But not this album. Masterpiece. Alright, moving on to my number 4. And we're starting to get into my top 3 favorite bands of all time. Deftones. Deftones is my 3rd favorite band of all time. I've been listening to these guys since I was like 14 years old. I remember my friend called me one day and said, you gotta listen to this band, man. You gotta listen to this band, when phones existed, not freaking cell phones, regular phones. And he called me and he said, you gotta listen to this. And he just turned the volume up of his stereo, as loud as he could, and I got to listen My Own Summer, which is the first song of this album. I hope I don't get any shadow banning from YouTube for showing this cover. That's the cover. Yeah, this girl in bikini. Anyway, and I heard and now I was blown away. I was like, man, what is that band? He said it's called Deftones. Shit, man. And so I went to the record store and they did not have this album. They have White Pony, which is by far, according to most people and most fans, the best Deftones album of all time. I kind of agree with that. I like this one a little bit more, but White Pony is also a masterpiece. It came out in the year 2000. This is from 1997. And the White Pony album was there to free to listen. You can just grab the headphones, and listen to it, and it blew the fuck out of me, man. And I grabbed the CD and I bought it. And I've been a die-hard fan of Deftones ever since. I've enjoyed almost every single one of their albums. They do have a bunch of albums that I do not really love. There's one called Saturday Night Wrist. That's the worst, in my opinion, or alongside with OMS. No, OMS is the new one. That's a great album. The one that came out 2 years ago. Gore. I think that's Gore. And that's a pretty bad album, in my opinion. It isn't terrible. It is kind of a weak album. But all the others are beautiful. And this one was the second album Deftones released. Became a huge fan. And My Own Summer, which is one of the most popular Deftones songs, it's not one of my favorites in this album. I think my favorites are Be Quiet and Drive, Lotion, and Damone. Damone is the hidden song I don't know if you ever bought CDs, when you guys were younger, but sometimes these metal bands used to include this hidden song, secret song that was at the very end. You will listen to the last song, and then you will notice that the record on your player, it was still going, and there was just silence. Sometimes for like 10 seconds, sometimes for like 10 minutes, and then a new song, another song will start playing. These guys did that with Around the Fur. Around the Fur, that's the name of the album. Around the Fur. Yeah, the fur. Anyway, I hope I don't get censored or demonetized. Alright, my last three albums. This one is very, very special to me. This album, when I first listened to it, I was like 13 years old, I think, and I was like, meh, I don't like this, whatever. I'm not interested in this band. Then a couple of years later, when I first listened to, and when I listened to this album for the second time, it destroyed me. It ruined me in a good way. It's such an extremely depressing album, and that is Adore by the Smashing Pumpkins. Yeah, this is the album that pretty much divided fan base, because the Smashing Pumpkins used to be like a grunge band, like an alternative rock band, and they released several albums before. This one was one of the last ones before they broke up. They came back in 2007, and they're still going. The Smashing Pumpkins is still there, in case you didn't know. But yeah, the Smashing Pumpkins were a great, hugely influential band in the 90s. But Billy Corgan, the singer, he developed a reputation for being an asshole. He is an asshole. And a lot of grunge bands from back in the day, they didn't like this guy, But anyway, I'm a huge Pumpkins fan. I don't think the Pumpkins used to be one of my 5 favorite bands of all time when I was a teenager. Other bands took their place, like Gary Newman, which I showed at the beginning. Killing Joke, which was my number 6, They're a part of my top 5 favorite bands, but if there had to be a 6th favorite band, it will definitely be the Smashing Pumpkins. And this album, this is not a grunge album. This is more like, it's its own music. It's like very depressing music, kind of. It has some synth rock songs, some synth pop songs, some really melancholic, music in there. I don't even know what to call this type of music. If you're curious, go listen to this album, and you'll find this really acoustic, song at the beginning called To Shayla, and then this electronic kind of industrial song, pretty popular song called Ava Adore, and then it's just the whole album is like, what the hell am I listening to? It's so unique, but most of the songs in this album are like extremely depressing songs, and these will probably ruin you and destroy you too, in a good sense. It's a very melancholic album. Love this one to death. And speaking about melancholic album, well, one thing I forgot to say, it's kind of personal, but well, let's just say that when I listened to this album, I was very depressed. I was sick with depression, and this album only made things worse. Made me even more depressed. But it also kind of saved me and helped me a lot. Music. The vocalist of a band called My Vitriol, phenomenal band, by the way. Honorable mention, My Vitriol. He once said, people will always betray you, no matter what. But music will never betray you. And yeah, the Smashing Pumpkins. How I met the Smashing Pumpkins? Damn, man, I don't remember. Wow, the Smashing Pumpkins may be one of the only bands that I really, really love, and I don't even remember how I met them. I think my brother, I remember now. I think my brother, my older brother, he had the single of this album sold separately in a CD with 3 songs. The Ava Adore was the first single of this album. And beautiful video. I strongly recommend watching that video. The Ava Adore video is all made in one long shot with extremely gothic, and makeup and custom design. It's just amazing. And I think he had that single, and I just borrowed it. I was a big fan. I was starting to get into rock back then. I borrowed it, and I really enjoyed Ava Adore. But back then, now I do. I'm a huge fan of the other 2 songs that come in that single. and they're called, the second one it's called Xarina, and the third one Once in a While, which is one of my all-time favorite Smashing Pumpkins songs. But back then I only liked Ava Adore. But I think that's how I met the Smashing Pumpkins. But anyway, thanks to this. Whereas everybody knew them for their hits Today, Shadow Rock, or Disarm, or Zero, Tonight, Bullet with Butterfly Wings, all of those songs, and I met them with their least popular album. Anyway, guys, speaking about, we're getting to your, I see somebody mentioning Mushroom Head. Oh man, okay, at the end. This is The Cure, and this is their most popular album, the best album of The Cure by far. Everybody agrees on that, and this is Disintegration. Disintegration was a before and an after for the band The Cure. It took everything right and amazing from The Cure, and Robert Smith, put it here. And, well, it is a very depressing album. It does have a couple of hits that I don't like. Everybody loves Love Song. I don't like that song. I kind of like the solo, but, it's a boring-ass song to me. Pictures of You, however, I'm a huge fan. I know in the guitar, and I don't know. I became a fan of this album. My story is very peculiar because this is thanks to this album that I met The Cure. It was by mere chance, not because it was the most popular thing. So I have the cassette. I only own in my collection like 3 cassettes, and they're all from The Cure. I should have brought them with me. They are in the other room, but I also have this one on cassette. So what happened is I was like 9 or 10 years old probably, and I went to my grandparents' house. My uncle, which is the youngest in the family, used to live there, and he had this vinyl collection and cassette collection. And so, The Cure was there, right? He had the cassette, this one, the cassette version of this one, Disintegration. And I was curious. I was like, what's this, Okay, so I had my Walkman. Yeah, I'm that old. I had a Walkman where you put the cassettes, in your headphones. Probably some of you are too young to remember that. And I listened to it and I was bored to pieces. I was like, this has gotta be the most boring music I've ever listened to in my life. I didn't even finish listening to the cassette. I only listened to side A, and I was like, fuck this, man. This is what, The Cure? Oh my god, boring. And then sometime later, probably a few years later, maybe 3, 4, I don't remember that much, I turned on the TV, and I had nothing to watch back then, and I just, changed the channels until I came up with this live show from The Cure. I don't remember the name of the live show, but I was like, hey. Well, at that moment, when I started watching the show, I was like, I had no idea. They were the same band that I had ditched before. So I just started watching the content, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And I got so into it for no reason. For whatever reason, I got so into it, and I was like, man, this is a great band. And when they said this was The Cure, I was like, wait a minute. Is that the same boring-ass band that I listened to at my uncle's place? Oh, fuck. And then, I'm not sure how much time passed until I got my hands on the cassette again, and I listened to it again, and I completely changed my mind, and I became a huge fan. And yes, I'm a diehard fan of The Cure, my second favorite band of all time since I was like 15 years old, 16 probably, and it's been there my second place forever, second only to 9 Inch Nails, and man, it's just such an important band in the history of music, such an extremely influential band, and this album, one of the most powerful albums in my music life, Disintegration. Alright, last but not least, of course it's gotta be a 9 Inch Nails record. Most of my favorite records of all time are from 9 Inch Nails, absolutely, it's my favorite band since I was like 15 years old, and how I met 9 Inch Nails is the same way on how I met Deftones, or other bands like Silverchair, a grunge band, Orgy. I went to this record store, Mix Up, and the album, there was this record, this orange record, I still have it. It's called Broken, and it's an EP by 9 Inch Nails, and that record just blew me away, and But I remember it was very expensive because some albums by some bands were imports, so they were more expensive. They weren't produced in Mexico. This one, the Fragile, the masterpiece, the album of my life. This one, it was sold in Mexico, but the other one, no, it wasn't. It was sold, so it was just there. I used to go to mix up to this record store just to listen to that EP over and over again because I couldn't afford it. It was just too expensive back then. So, like a year later, or probably less, Nine Inch Nails released this album in 1999. I didn't get into this until the year 2000 because, back then, CDs, well, musicians were releasing albums that weren't that popular. Nine Inch Nails nowadays is huge, a very popular band, but back then, in Mexico, nobody fucking knew Nine Inch Nails. Nobody knew this fucking logo. So, it took like 6 months for albums to arrive to Mexico. They were in the US, pretty much next door. It took forever. So I listened to this album in mix-up. I was like, man, it's the same band from that other EP that I've been listening to that every time I come here. So let's listen to this. And when I listened to this freaking album, that's the day I decided, I listened to it, removed the headphones, put them back, and I said, I want to be a musician. I want to learn how to play instruments. I want to learn how to sing. I want to be a fucking musician, man. I want to do music. You know what happened later, right? 10 years later, I gave up. I gave music up, and now I'm a writer and a YouTuber. But anyway, I'm still sort of like a musician. I still play the guitar, every day. In fact, last night, one of my strings broke. I'm gonna have to buy a new set of strings for my guitar. So yeah, anyway, I know a lot of songs from this album, on the guitar and on the keyboards as well. Phenomenal record, masterpiece. This is the Nine Inch Nails album. Everybody's gonna tell you the best Nine Inch Nails album is the Downward Spiral. Amazing album. I own every single Nine Inch Nails record. There's also a Pretty Hate Machine, which is the first album. Masterpieces, yeah, sure, but this is like the epitome of Nine Inch Nails. This is like perfection. Amazing album. Listen to this one, it also broke me, it also ruined me. Some songs in there that are like, man, they really take you down. Very melancholic, and then did some, badass, angry songs, all emotions in one in this freaking album. The Fragile by Nine Inch Nails. And that's my top 10. So, yeah, sure, absolutely. I'm a huge Nine Inch Nails fan. In fact, a little trivia for you guys. When I was this second channel, it was always called Eric Landon, or when it was conceived. I don't remember when I created this second channel, but at the beginning, this was like 7 years ago. I was uploading the slideshow videos on my main channel. Do you guys remember that? That was in 2014, almost 8 years ago. And I wanted that channel to be something else. But for a moment, I planned this second channel was going to be called That Guy with the Nin T-shirt. Stupid, I know. And I was gonna cover music, and I was gonna, this channel was gonna be a music channel, where I will talk about bands and songs and all that jazz. In the end, I didn't do it for two reasons. One of the main reason was because I found out that music channels where people, cover music and criticize and review music and whatever, they struggle a lot with copyright claims. A lot, I mean a lot. They barely make any money. So I was like, man, I don't want to deal with that. They have a lot of freaking issues, They show like 5 seconds of a Beatles song and they get a copyright claim immediately. Man, it's bullshit, man. And that's what turned me off. I was like, man, no way. And the second reason was because I felt there were too many music channels, dedicated to criticize or reviewing music, right? So I was like, man, I don't want to be, yet another one of those channels. So the idea died, but it was going to be called this second channel, That Guy with the Nin T-shirt. Oh man, good times. So like I said, honorable mentions, almost every single other Nine Inch Nails album, Deftones album, The Cure album, other albums like the Gary Newman, which I showed at the beginning, all the first 4 Gary Newman albums, amazing albums. Pretty much almost every single Killing Joke album, they have some Killing Joke in the 90s, man. That was phenomenal, phenomenal. Killing Joke, the other two Orgy records, you know, Dead Sea. You guys don't know that band, man. I don't have a single album by these guys because they were very niche, very obscure. I never found a single album by these guys back in the day. Dead Sea, it's Dead, Deadsy, Dead Sea. Look it up. Phenomenal gothic, you know, dark as hell band. And you should also look for the old stuff by this Spanish band called Trobar de Morte. You know, wow, an independent band from Spain. You know, their music always blew me away. Another big honorable mention is Hocico. You know, huge fan of that band. You know, they're still releasing records. Band started in the mid 90s, you know, with some industrial stuff, and then they went full electro, aggro tech, you know, dark electro music. And huge fan too. Honorable mention. Somebody was mentioning Mushroom Head. There's this album, I think it's Double X. Remind me the name of the album? I don't have that album, you know, I've always wanted that album. I have a pirated copy of that album. And that's pretty much the only Mushroom Head album that I like, actually. I'm a big fan of that album, you know, Mushroom Head. What a masterpiece of an album. I think it's like a compilation album of their previous two records, something like that. And it has these hits, Before I Die, Boom, These Filthy Hands, Solitaire Unraveling. I fucking love that album, Mushroom Head. And yeah, before you bring Slipknot to the table, I'm not a fan. I kind of respect Corey Taylor and Slipknot, you know, but I've never been a fan. I bought one album once, I think it was their first album, and I remember I never got into it. I listened to it over and over again. I was like, man, this is just not. There's a couple of songs that I liked, but that's about it. Other bands from their time, you know, Linkin Park. Linkin Park became huge, and I got their first record, Hybrid Theory. But again, you know, I was never a big fan. The same thing happened to me with several bands, you know, like Korn, Limp Bizkit. You know, I got 2 records from Limp Bizkit back in the 90s, and I was like, it's just those bands that you listen to because they're trending and because your friends like them. The Bloodhound Gang, you guys remember that piece of shit of a band? And you just listen to the albums a few times and you're like, man, it's not speaking to me. All these albums, man, they spoke to me. They're like, I connected with these albums, with Korn, Limp Bizkit, you know, all of those albums. They were always like, I like a few songs, maybe 2-3 songs, and that's it. And then you just forget about them, you know. I like some songs, you know, I can watch a Korn show if I want to from the old days, because Korn nowadays is garbage in my opinion. It's like Metallica, it's fucking trash, you know. And well, they used to be great in the 90s, Metallica, you know, in the 80s and 90s, Metallica was wow, fucking wow. Megadeth was amazing. They still are. Fear Factory, I'm a huge Fear Factory fan as well, you know. I have Obsolete. That album was going to be in this video today, Obsolete by Fear Factory. That was a phenomenal record. Burn C. Bell left Fear Factory, I think it was last year, right? Man, god damn it, you know, Fear Factory without Burn C. Bell, I don't know what the fuck these guys are gonna do, man. I mean, I love Dino, and Dino Cazares, you know, Mexican-American guy, phenomenal guitar player, you know, he's pretty much the leader of the band, so I don't know what they're gonna do now. But yeah, other bands are there, you know, believe it or not, I'm a fan of Nirvana. Not the biggest fan, but I have a few albums, I have the first 3 albums. Nirvana, you know, Alice in Chains, I'm a fan of Alice in Chains, I have 1 album, Alice in Chains. One of these days I'll show you my record collection. It isn't that big, I have like 50 records and that's it, CDs, and one of these days I'll make a video about that because I want to make videos. This is the type of content that I want to create in this second channel. I think the videos from before, my top 10s, my top 5s, I think they will eventually find a better home on Eric Lennon RPG. I'm planning on taking them down from this channel and uploading them one day on Eric Lennon RPG. And this channel will pretty much become this, you know, mostly live streams, you know, or these types of vlogs, these videos. Anyway, Ministry, that's a phenomenal band too. I'm not the biggest fan because Ministry to me is like Hocico. I listened to one album and I only like like 2-3 songs of that album, and it's happened to me ever since with Ministry, with every album. And believe it or not, I'm a big fan of the first album. What was the name? Fuck, I just listened to it. Listened to the album With Sympathy. The first Ministry album. It's like a synth pop from the 80s type of music, but I love it. I fucking love it, man. That music, the style of Ministry before they became the industrial metal pioneers that they are nowadays, you know, back then they used to do this completely different music, and I loved it. I love that album, man. I love this Same Old Madness song, you know, huge fan. But anyway, yeah, Ministry, I'm a fan, but I'm not really. System of a Down, never been a fan, never clicked with me. I met those guys in the Scream 3, the movie Scream, the third one. You know, I got this album. I hated the movie, fucking garbage movie, but the album, the soundtrack was phenomenal. It was full of great bands, and I discovered a lot of bands back then. And System of a Down was one of them. I don't remember the song from System of a Down in that album, but I liked it. And then, well, System of a Down pretty much became extremely popular with Chop Suey, right? And that was an alright song to me, but I liked more Aerials. Aerials! Da, da, da. That's a great song. Toxicity too. But I'm not a System of a Down fan. Typo Negative, you know, I gave him a few chances. Not really a fan either. I like a few songs, and that's it. Aphex Twin, of course I know Aphex Twin. My favorite song is April 14th, something like that. Avril 14th, you know, I love that song, but I'm not the biggest Aphex Twin fan. I respect the guy, genius, that guy. Yeah, Audioslave, never. I don't like Audioslave at all. Soundgarden is better, you know, but yeah, Audioslave, I never liked it. Soundgarden was fine. Not a huge fan, but I like Soundgarden. My favorite song is Blow Up the Outside World. Oh man, that's an amazing Soundgarden song. What else are you guys bringing up to the table? Somebody mentioned Tiamat. Not really a fan, I know the band. Static X of course, you know, rest in peace, Wayne Static. He died a long time ago. Static X, you know, that's a great band. Radiohead, I always found Radiohead to be... I mean, they are an excellent band, also like very, very influential. But I think Radiohead, I always felt they were very much on the commercial side. But the truth about Radiohead is that their commercial side, you know, is like, that's the one everybody hates. If you really listen to the other non-commercial side of Radiohead, it's amazing. I'm not a fan, but Radiohead, the non-commercial Radiohead, great. What else, you know, we're gonna get into these rock bands, Foo Fighters. Foo Fighters, I like a few songs, but they're like, it's okay. Pearl Jam, I'm a fan of Pearl Jam. You know, Pearl Jam's a great band. Man, we could talk about music all day. I think we're gonna have to dedicate a whole video to just bands. My favorite bands of all time, something like that, and we can keep discussing these bands, you know, because today was more about the albums. Anyway, guys, that's my video. I hope you enjoyed it. You know, thanks for watching. Thank you for joining. You know, I didn't think some people will join. I thought I was going to have like 5 people watching and that's it. But anyway, thank you very much. I think today you pretty much learned that I'm not the biggest heavy metal head. You know, I love metal, but I'm more on the industrial metal side or the grunge side or the post-punk experimental side. You know, I'm that kind of guy. Gothic music maybe, but when it comes to heavy metal, you know, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Slayer, Metallica, you know, all those bands from the 80s, you know, I'm not Led Zeppelin, you know, Black Sabbath, you know, all of those bands from the 70s and 80s. I'm not the biggest fan, really. So maybe I shouldn't consider myself a metalhead, huh? But come on, I love Fear Factory, bands like that, Dead Sea, you know, heavy bands, Orgy, Deftones, god damn it. Man, some 9 Inch Nails stuff is really freaking heavy. But anyway, you know, prolonging this. Thank you for joining, guys, and thank you for joining for including your comments and your favorite bands. Thanks for sharing. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and that's it. I will see you next time. I will see you in the afternoon if you care to join. I'll be starting a new playthrough, a complete playthrough of a Tales game. Oh yeah. See you guys in like probably 5 hours or less. Thanks guys. Thanks for watching. See you next time.